Hi, and welcome to Art Lessons Unlimited. If you would like to learn to draw this X-Wing fighter, you're in the right place. Besides a 9 by 12 inch piece of paper, we'll need a ruler, a pencil. I'll use two pencils, a light pencil and a dark pencil, and an eraser, a kneaded eraser, or a pink rubber eraser, or even a white vinyl eraser. If you've never made a drawing using two-point perspective before, you might want to watch my video titled Two-Point Perspective Practice before moving on with this video. Now let's get into the drawing. We're going to use two-point perspective. I should say first that we'll be using two vanishing points, each 2 inches from the upper edges of our 9 by 12 sheet of paper. Start with a line towards vanishing point B. It runs through the middle or middle upper portion of our paper, and a second line towards vanishing point B that runs through the middle or lower middle portion of our paper. See how these two lines interact with the left edge of the paper to help you lay them out accurately. Close off the end of the two first lines, both the front and the back, to make a rectangle using vanishing point A, so that the proportion of your shape is similar to the proportion of my shape. Your drawing may not match my drawing exactly, but it can still look like a great X-Wing fighter. Now let's turn this shape into a form, a rectangular prism, by drawing some lines straight down from the three corners of our shape. The corner on the right, the corner on the left, and the lower corner in the center. Pause the video to catch up at any time. Alright, now I'm going to look for the center of the leading edge of our rectangular prism and draw a line towards vanishing point B and towards vanishing point A. Next, we'll find the canopy or cockpit of our X-Wing fighter. I'll go ahead and draw a shape in for where an android would set, maybe R2, just as a reference point. You can find a copy of this finished drawing by following a link in the description of this video, by the way. Using vanishing point A and some diagonal lines that run downward towards the front of our X-Wing, we'll figure out or determine the angle or slope of our pilot's canopy. Right now, we're adding some lines in from the front edge towards the canopy to determine about where our nose cone and fuselage will lie. We're carving our X-Wing out of this block. Notice that these lines do not lean towards a vanishing point. Do some erasing as you go, just to clean up your drawing. We'll continue working on the angle or slope of our nose cone with some lines that do not necessarily follow the vanishing points. See how there's a point or pitch or a taper to the fuselage towards our nose cone. Find the center of our nose cone by using a line that is parallel to the edges of the nose cone. Then make two more lines on either side of that line to determine the width of our X-Wing fighter. Using vanishing point B, stretch these lines down the top of our fuselage. Draw in the bottom edge of our narrower nose cone, and from there, draw towards vanishing point B. Later in the drawing, we'll adjust the angle of the last line that we just drew. These two lines across the top of the canopy are parallel to the right and left edge of that canopy, and then I will flare those lines outward just a little bit to reflect the shape of the top glass window of the pilot's canopy. Using vanishing point A, divide the fuselage into thirds with two lines that run across its top edge. Because the fuselage tapers from smaller to larger towards the back of the X-wing, we're going to need to change one of those lines so that it leans a little bit lower as we move towards the left edge of our paper. These new lines along the side of our fuselage are not straight up and down. See how they're outside of the ruler by just a small margin, just a few degrees. I'm going to draw a line slightly above the bottom edge of our fuselage, and that's going to become the new horizontal axis of our fuselage. This new line does not go towards vanishing point B, but slightly below it, and now you can see the taper of the fuselage itself. Using a couple of more lines that flare out towards the right at an angle, we'll lay those in from the corners of our pilot's canopy, and when those lines hit the horizontal axis of our fuselage, they need to lean back the other direction. That helps us to understand and see the true form of the X-wing. I'm adding some small shapes in for the smaller windows on the back side of the pilot's canopy. And from the corner of one of those small shapes, we'll draw towards vanishing point B. Same thing on the other side. Be sure to pause the video as necessary so that you can keep up. Now we'll go ahead and start with one of the round shapes on the front of our thrust engine and use vanishing point A from the top and bottom of that circle to determine where the thrust engine on the far side of our X-wing fighter needs to be. Notice that the thrust engine on our right that's below the first circle that we drew is just slightly to the inside of that first thrust engine, and use a line towards vanishing point A from the top and bottom of that engine as well. We may not see the fourth thrust engine. Using a line from vanishing point A, we'll begin our wings. That first line from vanishing point A that runs across the top of our X-wing fighter is not one of the wings. The leading edge of the wing extends from that line down towards the bottom of our upper thrust engines. That line is simply there to help us determine how wide the wings should be. We can erase that. And the outer edges of our top wings do need to lean towards vanishing point B. Using vanishing point B again, we can find the straighter sides of our thrust engines and go ahead and add in the dimensional deflector shield that runs along the edge of our thrust engine on the right. That's going to help us draw in the back edge of our first completed wing. See how it slightly tapers from the center of our X-wing towards the outer edge. Using vanishing point A and B, we've got lines that intersect at a point where the back of our top thrust engine on the left should end. And we'll use another line towards vanishing point A from the top wing on the right to determine where the back corner of the wing on our left should be. Now that we have two wings in place, we can use what we've drawn to help us find the lower wings. I've got two lines that go straight down from the front outer edges of those wings, and those wings lie on top of the lower thrust engines. The outer edge of the lower wings also need to be drawn from vanishing point B. And those wings also have a slight taper from narrower out at the tips to slightly wider towards the center of our X-wing. Some of these parts are dimensional, and they need a second line next to the first so that they have a little bit of form, a little bit of dimension. Now it's time to draw in our laser cannons. The laser cannons are simply cylinders out at the tips of our 4 wings. The longer sides of our laser cannons lean towards vanishing point B. Use your ruler to find those. And the fronts are mostly or nearly circles. Now the laser tip is an even smaller cylinder that comes out of the center of our laser cannons, and they're quite long. The laser tip ends in a point just in front of the flashback suppressors that are sort of a C-shaped form. And we'll use the tip of one laser and vanishing point A and stretch a line all the way across our drawing so that we can figure out where the tips of the lasers on the wings to our right should fall. Each of these long laser cannons and laser tips need to come from vanishing point B. They are not parallel on the paper, but they would be in real life, and they will appear to be by using vanishing point B. You can go ahead and split the insides of our thruster engines with a T shape, an upside down T shape. And I'm going to just draw in the deflector shield on the top wing on our left. The thruster engines are in 2 parts. They have a smaller cylinder attached to the top back of the larger forward cylinder. So we'll use vanishing point A to make sure the top edges of those portions of our thruster engines are in line with one another. Remember, you can adjust the proportion of these parts at any time by drawing the front or the back edges closer or further from the forward edge. Let's go ahead and start working on our nose cone. It's made of curves. This will be a good example of how you can make part of your drawing and then change part of your drawing for proportion's sake. So you will want to look at a photograph of an X-wing to help you now with some of these details. I don't think this nose cone is long enough, so I'm going to use my vanishing point B and A to move the axis slightly outside or forward and redraw these curves so they stretch out just a bit further. We'll go ahead and start the sensor window that lies on top of our nose cone. We can use the curved lines that we've already drawn and follow them to create the right and left side of our sensor window. And inside of that sensor window is a stair-step formation. The shorter lines inside of that window lean towards vanishing point A, and they're straight. There we are. Again, you will need to refer to illustrations of an X-wing. It doesn't matter from what angle, just to help you place the details in the right place. Still adjusting some of the proportions of my parts, I believe my pilot's canopy is not long and flat enough, so I'm going to stretch out the right and left edges of the top glass piece of that canopy so that it reaches a little bit further down the top side of our X-wing's fuselage. There we are. You can see the difference now. And using the lines that are already there, I'll just draw some more lines to the inside of those to create the frame around the clear glass portions of our pilot's canopy. I've switched to a darker pencil at this point so that the drawing will be more permanent. In a lot of places, you're drawing a line right next to an existing line to give the impression of three-dimensionality. We'll go ahead and add a few shapes behind our R2 unit. And the upside down T form needs double lines so that it feels a little bit more dimensional as well, as does the leading edge of our thrust engines. At this point, a lot of the details are lines that either lean towards a vanishing point or follow the curves in some places of the forms that already make the bulk of our X-Wing fighter. The top side has some yellow stripes on it. Our drawing will remain in black and white. It's just a pencil sketch. And the side of our X-Wing's fuselage has some red stripes on it, so they'll be shaded a bit darker when we get there. All of these extra lines give the impression of detail and specificity. There are more shapes on the top sides of all four of our wings. You can still use your ruler and vanishing points A and B to lay out some of the edges of these shapes. Don't worry about getting the proportion of these shapes perfect. It's still going to look accurate and detailed. Once you've made this drawing of an X-Wing fighter, you can change the vanishing points and bring them higher or lower along the edges of your page to draw an X-Wing from slightly different points of view or slightly different perspectives. The point of this drawing isn't to copy an existing drawing, but to be able to draw an X-Wing fighter from any angle. There is another form on the inside of the lower wing on our right, sort of a exposed half cylinder. And we'll make those small deflector shields a bit more dimensional as well. Some of these shapes are rectangular in nature and some are more like a trapezoid. Be sensitive to that. Just a few more detailed contours and we'll do some minimal shading just to break up some of these shapes from one another. More details on the smaller rear portion of our thrust engines. Don't forget to sharpen your pencil, and it's time for shading. The strokes of our shading will follow the direction of the planes. Inside of the canopy, be sure to save a thin triangle for a lighter value so that the canopy feels like it's clear, like we're looking through it. Right now, I'm working on stripes along the side of our fuselage that would be red, which is a darker color than the yellow stripes that would be across the top. You can see the value difference there in the drawing. And the inside of our thrust engines, they need to be pretty dark. Same with that half cylinder and the area around it on the top of our lower wing on the right. And I'm going to give that wing some light shading as well, a light gray. I'm shading with lines right now, which has a sketchy feel to it. Don't forget the spiral pattern across your laser cannons. Some more shading with an angled line along the side of the fuselage. And we'll go ahead and put some tracer lines coming out of our thrust engines and off of the edges of our wing, just to create the feeling of movement. If you enjoyed this drawing, please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next. And thank you for watching.